Record. Everybody, welcome back to Five Features. I'm your host, Joe Panicelli, and today we're joined with a very special guest, Big Five Hall of Famer, St. Joe's Hall of Famer, co-Big Five Player of the Year, Pat Calathes. Pat, thanks a lot for joining me. How you doing?
Good, good. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a little before this about we were both watching the Hawks game, and is that something you try to keep tabs on and follow them as you kind of go on through your career and have your own your own life now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll always be a part of Hawk Hill. I was up there last year. Met with Coach Lang. Rob Sullivan is now, part of the business side of it and stuff. Met with him. He showed me around the new campus. All the updates.
Yeah.
Was able to sign the iron wall. And yeah, I mean, it's just that place always feels like home to me. No matter what they do. What kind of stuff they put in. It always just feels like there's always a good place in my heart for St. Joe's. So
Yeah, and I just tweeted out that you're coming on the show, and I put the dunk video of the Xavier game. Uh,
yeah. Yeah,
people had automatically people had the guy Hawk Hill Hardwood who covers St. Joe's said you're one of his favorite players to watch. So you
that's
know
awesome.
it's sort of a meaningful a mutual relationship between you and St. Joe's. It seems like
Yeah, definitely.
awesome. So sort of just I want to start like kind of with your high school career. I know you're a Florida guy, come from Florida. That seems pretty rare that someone would come to St. Joe's from Florida, I guess maybe, especially in that era. So, maybe sort of how'd you hear about, what was your initial like introduction to St. Joe's? How'd you hear about it? Obviously, like before you got there, I mean,
Yeah.
legendary team, my guy right here behind me.
No, for sure. So strangely, coming out my junior year, I grew about 4 inches and was still kind of playing point guard at the time. Ended up having about 25 offers. Nothing crazy, but all just kind of mid-major schools. I think the highest school at the time was maybe Creighton or Miami. Something. In those conferences.
Yeah.
And St. Joe's came in. I ended up speaking with Matt Brady, who was the assistant coach at the time. Loved him. He was fantastic. Coach Ross, Coach Bass, who were both there at the time. Spoke with them as well before meeting Coach Martelli. Coach Martelli came down, watched me play pickup with a bunch of guys, that played locally that were playing in college already. Offered me on the spot, told me he really liked my game. Was still kind of up in the air about it. Went to St. Joe's for my first official visit. I went to a couple places before that, unofficially, but went to St. Joe's for my first official visit.
Hmm.
Walked on campus and was just in awe. It was just wow, this place is unbelievable. Met with the team, saw the facilities. Obviously the facilities, were nice, but not nearly as nice as they are now. But just the panoramic view of everything, the tower, you know the whole setup was exactly where I saw myself. I wanted to be in a school that didn't have 40,000 people and, was more of a small, not a high school atmosphere, but a little bit bigger atmosphere.
Yeah.
And at the time, St. Joe's wasn't number one in the country. Obviously, that was a huge perk. After I signed, it became, the number one team in the country. And I'm like, wow, man, this is,
Awesome.
unbelievable. I'm the number one recruit in the country now, I mean, just, so, you
Yeah.
know, after after doing that. But yeah, after meeting with the coaches, after seeing the facilities, seeing the campus, I mean, I committed on the spot. Didn't ended up canceling my other visits, and
Wow.
knew that that was my place. That's a place where I wanted to be.
And what's that like? Sort of, you mentioned that growth spurt. I think I saw on Wikipedia. I was doing some research. Said that you had like a 10-inch growth spurt or something. I know you just said that's obviously not the case, but
Yeah.
what's it like? Sort of, did the offers sort of come flying in after that, or was there almost like a different path for you, given the fact that you had that growth spurt in your later high school years?
It was really weird. So going into high school, I was 5'9". I had to play 2 years of JV basketball. I always played point guard. Had to play 2 years of JV basketball just because I was growing so fast and my body wasn't catching up. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be, I'd be dribbling down the court, and I'd be backing somebody down the court, and they'd be like, "What is he doing?" He's a point guard, but I just fall over randomly sometimes. I mean, just because my feet and my body and my coordination wasn't catching up. And by the
Mhm.
time junior and senior year rolled around, I mean, it kind of progressed. Still couldn't gain a pound because my metabolism was so fast. Everything was whatever. Even that I feel like followed me a little bit into St. Joe's as well. My first year, coming into St. Joe's, I didn't really have the strength or the speed or anything like that yet to, play competitively, you
Yeah.
know, at the college level. I mean, but by the end of my senior year with high school, I mean, I could obviously compete with them, and I did, great in high school. But then that next level, I hadn't really caught up, and I mean, as time went on, I feel like I got in, I finally grew into myself, and was able to do that. But yeah, I mean, being, obviously going from 5'9", my dad was like, "Gosh, I hope you get a Division II scholarship. Like, I just don't want to pay for college." That's where I was sophomore year,
Yeah.
of high school, and then grew 4 or 5 inches. Then it went from, okay, well, we're not talking D2 anymore. We're talking, low D1. And then, as the offers started rolling in or whatever, then okay, wow, we're talking, higher level schools. And, that's kind of where, I ended up with St. Joe's.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
awesome. And sort of you kind of mentioned right there sort of about like that initial those initial challenges of like growing at a like rapid pace. When you're at St. Joe's,
yeah.
do you what's the like the workout regimen? Like, are you like automatically put on some sort of diet plan to sort of build that mass, and are you on a strict regimen for working out and stuff? What is that like, and how is it like sort of adapting to that if you weren't sort of on that tip before that?
I mean, college basketball, if you don't love the game, you can't do it. I think most people I speak with, and most people, I've dealt with, I guess in the past, like, wow, well, you're a college athlete, man, you got it great, you're on scholarship. And I don't think a lot of normal, people that aren't in that, system or that mindset really understand how much work actually has to go into, being a college basketball player. I mean, it's, almost, I wouldn't say every morning, but almost every morning, you have 6 a.m. weightlifting. I mean, then you go, right from that, they have food for you. Then you go to 8:30 class. And after class, you have shooting, then, have shots. And then after shots, you go right back to class. And then after class, you have practice, till 9 o'clock. And then you start the whole day over again, and that's for, a majority of, summertime going into, the middle part of the basketball season. I
Yep.
mean, it's a grind schedule. They make sure, I mean, you have everything from, your nutritionist to, obviously the coaches specialize in, what they think you need to develop. You have study hall, tutors. I mean, I was on tutors the whole time. I was at St. Joe's. So basically, whatever you need is available for you, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like the guys who I think are the greatest guys ever are the walk-ons. The guys who, just for the love of the game. We had a guy, Pete Cathopoulos, was a walk-on, and he had the biggest heart of anybody I know. I think he was 5'8", 5'9", but I mean, just 100% in practice every day, all day. And, he was walking at the time, so he wasn't getting a free scholarship, but was still putting in, all those hours and all that work. And, was just, those are guys who, I mean, just love it. And I have all the respect in the world for those guys. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot. Like it's
Yeah.
definitely a lot.
Full-time job on top of schoolwork,
Big time.
and
Big.
everyone has sort of their own aspirations for what the next level is. You get to St. Joe's. We just talked about sort of historic year, obviously one of the best years of all time for them, if not maybe the most actually. But what are sort of expectations like that your rookie year, as far as your freshman year, as far as we had this tremendous success, coach of the year, player of the year, but we also lost these guys, Delonte and Jameer. Those guys are gone now. So is there still a sort of crazy expectations for the year, or is it maybe a little bit more subdued because we're not going to have those two pieces that obviously spearheaded that campaign?
I mean, it was tough. I mean, I think the biggest pressure was obviously on Coach Martelli at the time, because he had just come from that perfect season, and then obviously went with had to come back without his best players and without his guys who had been driving the team. I mean, we still had a fantastic year. I think we got beat in the NIT finals, so we ended up still having a fantastic year. He was able to figure out, hey, listen, we don't have you know
The best
35, 40 points a game coming back, and we're going to have to build a team around a solid point guard in Dwayne Lee, but not a Jameer Nelson,
Yeah.
and pretty much a bunch of role guys. I mean, you have Pat Carroll who could, shoot it from anywhere on the court, but then, Dwayne Jones obviously was a monster down, down low, but he wasn't a guy you were going to throw in and get 20 points. John Bryant was a role player. Chet Stakaitis at the time was a role player. I don't know if anybody knows, who these guys are, but,
If you listen to this, they probably do.
yeah, I mean, so he was able to figure out a game to where, and if people remember watching these games, I mean, they were boring. I mean, we would just grind out the clock. I mean, it would be, you basically had Pat Carroll running the baseline, for 30 seconds each time. And I mean, we would figure out a way to win, and that's how great, in my opinion, that's how great Coach Martelli was at the time, and he could just figure out, how to win no matter what. And but I mean, it definitely was a lot of different expectations coming in. I think we started out struggling. Our first game of the year, I have a funny story for that. Our first game of the year, we played Kansas, at Kansas, and this was with Wayne Simeon, number two in the country at the time, Langford, Aaron Miles at point guard, and Pat Carroll was hurt, and somebody else was hurt. I remember coming into the arena and somebody brought me aside and they're like, Pat, come here, come talk to us. We hear you can really shoot the ball. We hear, you're a little bit of a mix between, Dirk Nowitzki and Larry Bird. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really that good. And then coming in my head being a 18-year-old, freshman, and I had never stepped on a college basketball court, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm really that good. Like, just wait, so, I get in the game. I'm like, all right, ready to go, thinking, and just the adrenaline of being in front of 15,000 people, at that arena. And, around the court, somebody kicks me the ball for three, shot it. My first shot of my college career, I swear I hit the backboard 3 feet higher than the rim, all backboard, nothing, went off the court. Coach Martelli was like, all right, come sit down. Come sit down. We ended up losing by 50 points.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we ended up losing by 50 points. On the way out, they're throwing stuff at us and still chanting, and still talking, yelling at us. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, that's a good wake up to college basketball. So
welcome to the league moment there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely something. And it's something, and that's a story I tell a lot of people, man, just because I think it's funny where, just how you start things and like just different moments in your life kind of, set that tone, to how you go. So
I can't imagine what you sort of really just detailed that experience of like you're just hard going through the roof, man. Like,
yeah, man.
What do you think sort of about like these smaller arenas that are in like the Big Five, the city schools? People always sort of point to them as they're a little bit more intimate, but they still get pretty rowdy. And when you were there, it seems like these days, not the fan base we're really looking for as far as support for the fans, and you can't really blame the fans and sometimes because of the success of the team in the recent years, but it seemed like you were sort of there at a peak of time with where the fans were really into it. And I was watching old videos, and it looks like sort of a madhouse in Hagen Arena. So talk about those games at Hagen and Palestra, et cetera, versus maybe some of those crazier, bigger games.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable experience. I think every game, it was Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse at the time when I was playing.
Yeah,
I think every game was sold out. For the 4 years I was there. Just the passion from the students, the fans, the alumni. It was an unbelievable experience. I remember before each game, literally for 4 years, I would have 15 friends. Hey, you still got those tickets? Hey, you still got those? They don't only give us like 2 or 3 tickets each just because of how sought after they were. And it's just like, hey, listen, sorry, I actually gave them away, but yeah, man, I mean, it was an unbelievable experience playing in that arena. The Palestra, same thing. I mean, when we played Villanova, when we played, the rivals in the Palestra, it would be sold out. I mean, everybody, the whole one side would be, Villanova, LaSalle, whoever, and the other side would be St. Joe's. And, the fans were super passionate. I mean, both ways. I mean, it was Philadelphia. So if you won, you guys are doing fantastic. If you lost, I'd be out having dinner and I'd have 3 or 4 people come up to me and be like, so why'd you think you shot that shot? Or why? So what do you think you guys can do for next game? And I'm like,
yeah.
And I mean, so it was definitely an awesome experience having that, love for a school and just for, the sport, obviously. I just went to a St. Joe's game. Like I said, I went to two games last year, and
Mm.
it's definitely not the same, obviously. And I can definitely understand why,
Yep.
if you have a couple of losing seasons, then, I mean, people don't, really like to support a team or whatever who can't win.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if they can turn it around, I mean, I think they'd get a lot of the fan base back,
Yeah. They want
especially,
to come. They want to
yeah,
come back.
definitely. I mean, especially the students. I mean, everybody loves, there's no football team. So, I mean, that's the pivotal thing for St. Joe's.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they can turn it around, if Coach Lang can turn it around, then I think for sure he'll end up, they can fill that place back up again.
Yeah. And speaking of Coach Lang, it's sort of guy has this polarizing figure, I guess, for St. Joe's right now. I won't really get into that, but maybe just talk about, obviously you had Martelli, who's you mentioned how great of an adjuster he was, and he's also known sort of as a sort of just a great mentor and a great
Oh
uh,
yeah.
figure in the coaches versus cancer and sort of just a great figurehead for a lot of young guys. So
Oh yeah.
about maybe just some stories or just what you sort of learned from him as moving on in your professional career from what you learned from him and how to be a good Catholic man at St. Joseph.
No, definitely. He was the best, man. I love Phil Martelli. I still do. I talked to him a couple weeks ago. I mean,
Yeah.
we still keep in touch. We talk, maybe once a month, and he was a great guy through my career. I think he brought out, exactly what I needed to do. Or he treated me how I need to be treated to bring out the best in me. Some guys he treated one way, some guys he treated a different way, and I think that was what he was fantastic at, is just bringing out the best in guys, and then figuring out how to use them all together. And yeah, I mean, it was tough my first couple years at St. Joe's for sure. Mostly just my first year, just kind of acclimating and getting used to the stuff. I wasn't getting a whole lot of playing time and everything,
Yeah.
but I mean, after obviously after that really fell into place, and I started getting more minutes on the court my sophomore year, and then junior year and senior year, obviously whatever. I mean, it definitely helped. I mean, just we built a lot tighter relationship and stuff with player to coach. He treats guys like family. I mean, and I know a lot of coaches say that. I know a lot of people say that, if you come here, and that's something he told my dad actually on my visit. He's just like, listen, he's like, you're moving from Florida, and that was, like we said or whatever. I was a guy coming from Florida up to Philadelphia. I hadn't lived away from home, and he was just like, listen, he's like, I'll be your son's dad away from home. I'll be, so whatever we needed, I mean, he was there. I mean, he was definitely, tough on us to get, the best out of us. But
Yep.
his wife was fantastic. She'd bring everybody over for dinner, a lot. I mean, everybody, it was just a close knit group. I mean, everybody felt like if there was a problem, I never had any issues, whatever, feeling like I can go talk to Coach, Coach Martelli, going to talk to Coach Bass, one of the guys, about anything I was dealing with. So, like I said, I still keep in touch with all those guys today, and I've been, out for 15 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's who they are as people. That's who they are, who they were as coaches.
Yeah, you talk to a lot of people, obviously, around the Big Five. They have tremendous respect for him. And
Uh-huh.
you talk about sort of this podcast is focused on the history of the Big Five, which is obviously a lot different now than when you were there. But
Yeah.
specifically, the A10 is a lot different. Talk about sort of the competition. Do you think back then versus maybe today, as far as the different teams that are involved? How Xavier, Temple,
Mhm.
sort of top tier teams that may have been sort of headliners along
Yeah.
with Joe's for the conference, and there's
Mhm.
obviously emerged some other great teams in this newer era of Big Ten. So, do you think
Yeah.
you can spot out any sort of differences there? Maybe like big man play specifically is probably a little different.
Yeah. I mean, I think before, when I was playing there, I think it was a little more, I would say, and obviously I'm a little bit biased, whatever, but I think it was a little
Yeah,
bit better just having, Xavier, having, Temple, having those teams there. I mean, obviously Davidson is tough. Davidson is always tough. A few of these other teams are always tough.
yeah,
Um, I mean, it's just, and a lot of it, I guess, just depends on the year too. I mean, you can have an A10 or whatever that's a powerhouse, one year with teams that are all, competing for one or two spots in the NCAA tournament. Then you have, an A10 where the team just kind of squeaks in, and it's just really not meant to be there. It's just that's just who the championship team was that year. So I mean, it really, I mean, it really just depends on, I guess, the year, but I think the teams before when I was playing were probably a little bit more competitive. Just I mean, we had Xavier, I think that was number 5 in the country,
Yeah,
when my senior year at the time. And then you know, yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's I don't know. I guess I feel like it goes year by year.
yeah,
Some
it's a
years,
down year. It's a down year this year for sure. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes I look at the A10, I'm like, wow, I mean, there's some pretty good teams this year. And then, I think it was 2 years ago. And then this year, I'm just kind of same thing. I agree. I'm not really feeling any of the teams.
yeah,
This,
I had Ryan Daly on. He kind of described it as almost
yeah,
like a dog fight kind of where
yeah.
a lot of teams have very similar skill levels and talent
Mhm.
levels, and they kind of just beat the crap out of each other. And
Mhm.
at the end of the year,
Yeah, I don't see any team this year who I look at the team, and I'm just like, wow, like they really are good this year. I mean, I'm with him. I mean, I think it's anybody's, year kind of whatever. I think anybody can kind of win the championship this year. It's just whoever plays, whoever works, works that hard in the game, I guess. And like I said,
yeah,
like he said, more of a dogfight. So
yeah. So when your years at St. Joe's, I think you guys went to what three? You had three A10 tournament berths and then one championship game against Temple, right?
yeah, we lost my senior year against
And that
Temple.
was at was that the Barclays Center, or I guess it probably wasn't the Barclays Center then.
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City. What
Mhm.
was that like? Was that a big crowd of Philly fans there at that game? And sort of how was that
Um,
game?
yeah, it was unbelievable. I think we just honestly we played Xavier for the semifinals.
Mhm.
Just beat them the last game, of Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse or whatever. We just beat them there and played them at the A10 championship, beat them again. And I think that took all the wind out of the team, or not really took the wind, but just that fire because we weren't expected to beat them. I mean, like I
Yeah,
said, they were top 10 in the country, and we just beat them once, and we just turned around and beat them again. So I think that took the wind out of the team. The next night we played Temple. I believe we were up like 8 at halftime, and it didn't even feel as much, in my opinion, as like a championship game like the night before. I mean, I feel like, and I think a lot of the guys kind of felt that, and they're just we didn't have that you know, energy just because I feel like it all left us the night before, with that
yeah,
game. I mean, there was a huge fan base, obviously, all the St. Joe's faithful came out. I mean,
Mhm.
they always had our back. So that was fantastic. I mean, I don't think we had enough, left in the tank to, get the final, to get that thing. I think they ended up beating us by 4, but,
Yeah.
you know,
And then moving up from there is as well as like a March Madness appearance.
yeah.
You guys obviously didn't go as far as you'd like. I mean, but just talk about, you almost talked about it before earlier with that Kansas game, screaming fans is probably the biggest spot you'll be in for any college basketball players, March Madness. So
Mm-hmm.
what's some of maybe the behind the scenes stuff that people don't really get from there, or like, some like moments leading up to that game against Oklahoma?
It was a great experience. We actually we weren't obviously we didn't win the championship, so we weren't sure if we were going to even be in the tournament. Coach Martelli and his wife invited us over to their house, as they always did. They had a big food spread.
Yeah.
The whole team was over there, the coaches and stuff. We were sitting in one room. The whole team was sitting in their living room, and then Coach was in the back with his wife. And you could, him being Coach, he's probably back there just kind of like, all right, all right, all right, really get into it. And his TV was actually about 4 seconds ahead of our TV. So we're all sitting here waiting, and they sit, the 10th spot for, I forget which side we were in, but
Yeah.
we hear Coach in the back, yes, yes, yes. And we're like, what's going on or whatever. And then St. Joe's, for the 10th spot in the, whatever division. And, so the whole team went nuts. It was awesome. Leading up to it was an unbelievable experience. Just being in that tournament. Everything is first class. I mean, they treat you fantastic. Obviously, reporters everywhere. Staying at the nicest hotels. It was a fantastic experience going into it. I forget what hotel we were staying at, but we had so many alumni, so many fans, that followed us, stayed at the same place. Going into the game, everybody was waiting outside, clapping for us, cheering for us going in.
Yeah.
We ended up, we drew obviously Oklahoma, Blake Griffin, game plan. Yeah, the game plan was to shut down Blake Griffin, which I think we did a really good job, but the guy who we were helping off of or whatever ended up having 30 points. So, and he was at six for the year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's how we ended up losing. But, I mean, it was definitely an unbelievable experience. being in that situation. And like I said, man, just having the alumni behind us, having the fans behind us, was fantastic.
Are you guys prepped for those sort of media opportunities and stuff? Because obviously at bigger schools they might have like some formal programs
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
talking to the media, but what's that training like? I mean, just basically don't say anything, is there no-nos and
Oh
stuff like
yeah.
that? What's
Oh
that?
yeah. Marie Wozniak was the person in
Yeah.
charge of that while I was there. And we would have our meetings with her, and she would basically prep us on how to talk, what to say. I mean, that was something we did, I believe, coming into St. Joe's too, or whatever. I mean, it was something we had to deal with. She knew the guys inside and out. So before we would speak to a reporter, or before we would go on, she'd be like, "Listen, don't talk about this. Listen, don't say this." And in the heat of the moment, some guys, and I believe I did it one time too. After a loss, you'll go in and just say something you'll accidentally curse, or you'll say something that's not the best, and then you'll come out afterwards, and she'll be like, "All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to deal with that." You know, you'll get a
Damage control.
yeah, she's like, there'll be damage control. You'll have to write an apology or something. I mean, just I had to do that one time, whatever. I mean, it's so they definitely prep you to deal with the media, the relations, reporters and stuff. Otherwise, you'd have a bunch of guys be put in front of a camera and be like not really know what to say, or not
Yeah.
be able to have a normal conversation.
What's sort of your feeling towards like media and stuff? Obviously, I mean, probably you have some respect because obviously you're here doing this interview now, but just sort of like through your pro career and
Yeah.
your college career, like was it sort of a chore to you to like talk to somebody after a game, especially after a loss, or did you kind of like did you sort of know as sort of a necessary part of the sport?
I honestly, I love doing it. It's not it's something, and especially in a situation where I know the person who's um, doing the interview, or somebody is a good person, and they are passionate about what they're doing and stuff. I mean, the worst in I've never had any issues in college or anything here in the United States. I can tell you some funny stories from overseas, but I like doing interviews. I mean, the same thing with the fans. I love, staying afterwards, speaking with the fans. I know some guys, just kind of blow through everybody and try to leave, after a loss or something like that. But, if someone's taking the time, whether it be a reporter, whether it be, a fan, whether it be anybody, to come up and talk to you afterwards, I mean, definitely give them the respect to, whatever they want. If they want to
Yeah,
argue, if they want to talk about it, if they want to hug, I mean, whatever it is, an interview, definitely do that, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're not, as a basketball player, you're not any better than anybody else. I mean, so
yeah,
why make their, job harder or whatever to track you down? Or why, if a fan wants to come up and, say hey and give you a hug, I mean, fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
that's always been my approach to everything, whether it be, in college, pro career, anything. So
Yeah, and you see sort of how that's changed too with like the John Rothsteins of the world, and
yeah.
people in high school are just like people in high school now have more media attention than
Oh yeah.
basketball players did 20 or 10 years ago and stuff. So
Mhm.
it's the business is growing. I've talked to a lot of guys about the transfer portal, the NIL stuff.
Yeah,
It's just a completely different world, and these coaches have to just be prepared for that and have make sure the team's on the same page as they are.
for sure. I'm
Yeah.
with you.
So I was sort of looking through some of your stuff online, and then also I just came across the Big Five Hall of Fame inductee. I think it was you and Donna Jewell, actually, the
Yeah.
longtime St. Joe's athletic director, were nominated and inducted in the same night, the same class. So, as a guy who's not from the city but has deep roots and understanding of sort of what that means to the city,
Mhm.
what does that mean to you as far as just like just an incredible achievement that you sort of accomplished?
It was awesome. It was honestly something that I never thought would actually happen, and I say it because my first year, and I mean, if people can remember when I first came in as a freshman, I literally got booed, being on the court, the first couple of games. In all honesty, like I should have, like it wasn't, I mean, after the Kansas game, I had a couple of games. I was playing backup point guard at the time at 6'9", and I mean, I just wasn't performing the way I should have. The team was losing. I mean, so it was, so I went from being booed my freshman year to obviously being the man my senior year, and then making it into the Hall of Fame. It was honestly, that's the best basketball accolade, I mean, I could ever have hoped for. Obviously, the best, it trumps any kind of championship I won professionally or anything like that or whatever. I mean, that's something that, I'll be able to carry forever. And, being, obviously the Big Five, such a historic, you know, thing. I mean, I love that. I mean, that's the trophy is sitting up, in the middle of my, loft upstairs. I mean, that's something I look at every day or whatever to,
Yeah,
it's unbelievable achievement.
definitely.
I'm extremely humbled to be in the Big Five Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and be among some real legends of the city. Um, when you're coming out of St. Joe's, what was sort of your not necessarily your options, but
Hmm?
what was your thought process? Where was your EuroLeague basketball is I think you see a lot of guys take that trip and especially in the city.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just don't really know much about it or like sort of how to get in. So what was like your introduction to that and like what were some options like you were weighing as far as what your next step was?
I'm coming out come after I graduated, you mean?
Yeah, at the St.
Okay.
Joe.
So I ended up was able to get my Greek citizenship. My dad or my grandfather is Greek. My brother and I were able to get my Greek to get our Greek citizenships.
Mhm.
I was on the draft board like mid to late second round, on a lot of the draft boards.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having 13 or 14 NBA workouts coming out. I ended up I went down to IMG in Florida to train,
Yeah.
for 6 weeks leading up to the draft. Ended up not getting drafted. Funny story. The Pacers at the time, they had pick 41, and they told my agent at the time, they're like, "Listen, we love Pat. We want to pick him at number 41." So I'm like, "Oh, fantastic!" I'm like, "At least I'll get drafted." I'm not going to have a guaranteed contract, but at least I'll get drafted.
Yeah.
And I see my name. The day of the draft, I saw across the bottom thing, whatever, that the Pacers traded pick number 41. So I'm like, all right. So
No.
okay, so maybe I won't get drafted. By the end of the night, Doc Rivers, I remember calling Doc Rivers. I remember called my agent at the time, or somebody from the Celtics ended up calling my agent at the time and said, "Do you want us to pick Pat at 60? We don't have a guaranteed position for him." That this was, when they had Kevin Garnett and Rondo and Paul Pierce, or whatever they were, a powerhouse, and they
Yeah.
didn't have any spots open. But if you want, we'll draft him at 60, and we can. I guess he can figure it out. My agent at the time said no. We want him to, I guess, have a shot at being picked up by another team and not being locked in by you guys.
Yeah.
And ended up going to Orlando for NBA Summer League, and then went to Vegas for the NBA Summer League. Neither team really worked out. I was playing behind Michael Beasley in Miami, and they just picked him, I think, number 2.
Mhm.
And in Vegas, their 5-man at the time got injured, so they brought me in to play the post. And at the time, I believe I was like 204 pounds.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't.
Just banging with those guys.
Yeah, it wasn't whatever. My Greek citizenship worked out. That finalized. I got a 3-year offer from a team that was in the EuroLeague or a Euro Cup at the time. We moved up to EuroLeague next year, but got a 3-year offer from that, and ended up going over there and doing that. And I mean, it that team, yeah, didn't. I mean, I could go into stories, but that team, it was in 2008, 2009 during the recession. So I mean, I could tell you some stories about that, but it was uh it was a great experience being able to transition from college to overseas. I never really had an issue, obviously being away from home, going from Florida to Philly. So I loved, the transition of, being able to go over and, live that lifestyle and travel around and see Europe and play and, do that. So
Yeah. Did you ever have any crossover with Ahmad Nivens, who was also on your St. Joe's team? I think he played in
Uh,
Italy and
yeah, he was in the first couple of years. I believe he was in Belgium, and then he was in France. We played. So Europe is so spread out leagues wise and teams
yeah.
wise. I mean, just the different divisions and everything. I mean, you have the Euro League is the best, then Euro Cup, and then it kind of goes from there. I believe we never had any crossover. He's a good friend of mine, so I mean, we definitely kept in touch while we were playing,
Yeah.
overseas, but none. We didn't actually ever get to play each other.
Yeah. I've
So
spoken to a few guys who played overseas, like Tyreek Duran from LaSalle and Shiz Austin from Temple, and they talked about sort of some challenges as far as like Tyreek was saying there were some like shady characters that he dealt with as far as like people with money and stuff. And
Mhm.
Shiz was saying they're both saying sort of like the downtime is a little it takes a lot to get used to. Obviously, did you have
Oh, yeah.
obviously you said your grandfather is from Greece, so did you have sort of like a family base there that you could kind of connect with when you first got there?
I actually didn't. So he was from Greece, but he when he moved to the States, I guess he was just kind of the last of the clan that was living over there. So most of my family from there moved over to, I believe, New York. So, I was there by myself at the time. There's definitely a lot of downtime. In the beginning part of the season, the European season kind of goes like this. They want you to show up middle of August. You're super busy from the middle of August till October. You have 2-a-day practices, you're doing preseason camp, you're doing medical testing, and all that. When the games start, you're still kind of busy. The downtime comes towards the middle of the season when the guys' bodies start wearing down a little bit, and
Mhm.
you'll have practice for, maybe 2 hours a day towards the middle of the season. And then the rest of the time is just kind of yours. So if you don't have your family there or you're in a place that's not, a great place to live, I mean, it's definitely a grind.
Yeah.
I know some guys, I never put myself in a situation to where I knew I would be miserable. Like I'm not going to go live somewhere. I actually lived in Kazakhstan for 3 years, but I'm not, I never put myself in a situation to where I knew, I'm not going to be able to do 10 months.
Mhm.
I personally know guys who I'm friends with who literally their first year over there ended up calling their dad and they're just like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
just can't, and the spectrum for European basketball is you have some players that are making, Mirotic is making $6 million a year. A lot of the guys, are making 3 million, 2.5, 2 million. And then you have guys who are making 800 euros per month, living in an apartment with four other guys and
Yeah.
doing that. And I mean, it basically just scraping by, trying to make that next, step. So, I mean, it really just depends on, I guess where you are in your career. And, a lot of it is just kind of getting through those first, I never had to do anything like that, but just getting through, those first couple of years and trying to, make it to bigger situations and better situations,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, one last question here. I'll get you out of here. But sort of, what was your, as a guy you said you mentioned your Big Five Hall of Fame. What would you sort of give advice to, or maybe not even advice, but the viewership is down a bit. People seem a little less excited as they used to be.
Mhm.
What would you sort of say to fans about this tradition and how like we should it's how integral it is to the city and why maybe we should sort of keep this going?
I mean, it's always going to turn around. I think if depend, there's a couple of bad years. I think for playing for St. Joe's, I mean, I think the fans and everybody who backed us, I think they were as integral for the team being successful as we were on the court. When you're playing in front of, and I know as a player, and all guys know this, when you're playing in a packed house with people who are just, ready to, jump over the stands for you and are that passionate about it, team's going to play better.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're playing against Duke and, the St. Joe's team or whatever, you're playing in a full arena, team's always going to play better, So, I mean, I think once guys know, that the team, that the fans are behind them, that the teams are behind, that the team, I'm sorry, that the fans are behind them, that the city is behind them, that, the alumni are behind them, that, I mean, I think they're going to get it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I think it'll help 100%. I think that'll make St. Joe's as a school more sought after for better recruits, to go. I mean, if you're a recruit and you go, back when I was recruited, I went to Midnight Madness. That was the night I came in, and I'm sure they did that on purpose. I went to Midnight Madness and just saw the passion of all the students, going to the thing. And I think that's probably a huge thing. I mean, obviously on top of the coaching, on top of the school, I mean, just seeing the passion is what sold me, and I think just having that, love for your school and it's, I mean, or right up there with, the guys they bring in. I mean, really, like I said, it just having a full arena, knowing that the whole school's behind you, that the city's behind you, that everybody's behind you, makes you feel better. I mean, I'm sorry, it makes you play better. I mean, it makes the team, want to kill themselves, for every play. It makes you want to, and like I said, when I went to the games last year, I mean, it was just completely different. Like it was just, you know, when I was there, I mean, everybody, the whole arena was standing up. The student section was nuts. Everybody had signs. I mean, everybody was going, going wild or whatever. I mean, now, it's definitely not the same, passion and fire. I mean, obviously there's not nearly as many people, but I mean, just the fans are not the same as they used to be, So,
Definitely.
I mean, and like I said, and it's not their fault at all or whatever. I mean, teams, if teams have a few losing seasons, I mean, it's definitely a lot harder to be behind. But I mean, I feel like if that comes back, I mean, I think it'll definitely help, kind of motivate guys a little bit. I mean, and at least, like I said, I mean, bringing in better recruits, bringing in, guys, higher level recruits, bringing in guys, you know, uh, who wouldn't usually, go there, but they see the passion, they see the fire. I mean, I mean, they
Yeah.
can, I
It's a
mean,
double-edged sword kind of where you
exactly. Yeah,
can't
it's
get those
all
guys because of how it looks now, but it is how it looks now
sure.
because we didn't get those guys in the first place. And
No,
so,
exactly. If
yeah,
you're a high level recruit, do you want to go to number one, number one in the conference, St. Joe's, or do you want to go to number 13 in the conference, St. Joe's? I mean, if you're number one at the time, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, let me think. I'll think about it. Definitely, the team is, doing fantastic. I mean, they're obviously a very good team,
yeah,
but I mean, but it just goes year by year. If you have one or two good years, I mean, then it completely propels the team back to where it was before. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's just like you said, it's a double edged sword. It's a process. I mean, hopefully, they get them back. Everybody starts, going back. So
definitely.
yeah,
Well, Pat, thanks a lot for joining me, man. You're a
definitely.
legend
Yeah.
of the
Thanks for the
scene.
invite.
It's always great to talk to you. Hopefully, maybe we talk again soon.
Perfect. Perfect. Sounds good, my man. Nice talking to
Awesome.
you. Have a good one.
Thanks again.
You too.